The Knight Model 3220A, made by Allied Corporation Electronics. They were super well known for having the catalogs back in the day, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. You could open an Allied Electronics Corporation catalog and order all of the favorite parts for electronics and ham radio supplies. And Knight was a division of Allied Radio Corporation out of Chicago, and Knight serviced the school and government and industrial sector, as well as personal audio devices and amplification. And they also made kits as well. You could get a Knight kit and build your own. This one, I believe, was not a kit because the parts are riveted on the chassis, and I assume that they just wouldn't have people doing riveting jobs on their amp kits. That's just an assumption, but I'm fairly sure, just from what I saw, that this was one of the on the commercial line, and there are bigger ones than this as well. This was a 10 watt or 20 watt, and I was able to retrieve a schematic for it. This was the second conversion that I did. I got this amp for a really good price off eBay, and I decided to go for it. And it's got a really neat layout. It's using 12AX7s and a 6AV6 and 7189s, which are EL84s, excuse me. So this amp is just ripe for the tone pickings, man, as far as that chimey, clean, sparkle drive kind of thing. And basically, when I got into it, I'll show you what I did when I converted it. I just did the usual things. IEC connector. I put an ohm selector switch in there, and it's got a simple in and out. And I also added a little what I think is a cathode bypass switch. I'm looking at the schematic and what I wrote down on here, but it doesn't appear to be that. And like I said, it was the second conversion that I had done, and I made it work, and it sounded good, and that's how I left it. And the switch actually switched it from being really calm and clean to just being a little bit of a grunt and edge to it, which I thought was super cool. And I thought, you know what, let's walk away and move on. And it's sat on the shelf, and every once in a while I pull it down and I enjoy the really clean tones in it, and I play around with it. Just a little while ago, on the god-awful demo I did, it was heating up, and I could smell the tubes, and I could smell it getting really warm, and it was getting a little grittier and grittier by the moment, and it tells me that something's going on in here. And it looked like the tubes were glowing a little bit. They were glowing a little bright, so I think it might be time to get into this bad boy and see what we can do, and maybe we can upgrade this a little bit from last year. And yeah, so I'll take it apart and we'll talk about it. All right, we're gonna take the bottom off this kind of carefully without smashing the buttons on the front. And I saw that Allied had paired up with Radio Shack at one point, and they had worked together on sales, and seemed like a nice conglomeration at the time. Similar products, similar directions. Why not? I don't know what drove me to buy this particular amp in particular. I think maybe I had seen the Guitologist doing a conversion on a Knight amplifier that he had, and got this for a good deal. shot of my work, I suppose, and what I had done to it. I see some Jupiters in there. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had this on the right ohms. I have it labeled there, but I wasn't sure when I had it plugged in. And I remember this cage is a little funny to take off. You take the bottom off, and then I do believe you have to pull these off. I came up with some interesting designs back in the day, how to put these chassis and boxes together. But like I said, I always enjoyed this amp. It always had a really clean, pristine tone, and fun little build. You know, didn't really do much with it. Didn't play with it. Just stuck it on the shelf and moved on to the next. And but after messing with it and looking at the schematic and thinking, boy, this is just a really simple design. It could really be played with, and it turned into a really cool little amp. So. And first thing that always shocked me about this is how close the transformers were to each other, because they always say, you know, they gotta be, you know, at least it is rotated at 90 degrees from the other one, but they're just right next to each other. And I always thought that was a design no-no, but you know, what do I know? Not much. So there's the chassis. Cool little chassis. Doesn't have much in the way of iron, you know, but it's not really meant to. So, you know, this is what drew me to working on the old PA amps, is that I just love the look of a chassis and tubes popping out of it, and the irons, and just the fun of, you know. Let's just pull these out. Boy, these are sloppy sockets. That's one thing about this amp. These are really sloppy sockets. Oh, and the 7189 EL84 6BQ5. So they're all crossoverable, and it is running a 6CA4. But in here, I believe I'm running a 6CA4. Yeah. Rectifier. And we have a, ooh, I got a Genelex Gold Lion in here. Cool. I remember getting those. Got them for Christmas. And there's the 6AV6, which is the being used as the phase inverter. Very simple phase inverter. Plate feeds the 7189, cathode feeds the other one. Boom. It's just simple design on this amplifier. Simplest of simples. And I wouldn't mind going through it and fortifying it a little bit. I think I have actually, now that I remember this, I think I have gotten into it one time since the initial build, and I kind of went through it a little bit and made sure everything was tight and secure, and the welds or the solders were fair. So it should be doing good. What I need to do is go through, and we need to check the bias, and we need to check some temperatures and values in this thing and see what it's doing, because I have a feeling that it's maybe a little over or under biased or something. So I know when I was working on it, I wasn't doing anything with the biasing whatsoever. So as far as I can remember. Anyways, so we'll get back into that. After we clean this baby off. you can see here. Let me pull this up. Super simple design. And you guys read schematics. It's got a really, really basic layout. And super simple amp. And that's what got me into doing amplifiers, was pulling these simple circuits apart, figuring them out, how and why, what's doing what. And you know, that's process of elimination, I suppose. So let's get into this thing and we'll check its pulse. Thing of note is that this amp is one of those amps that comes with that smell that I love so much in these old vintage PA heads. It's the way the circuitry smells inside of these amps. It has a really distinct smell that just makes my head spin, and I love the way it smells. It smells like the 50s and 60s or something. I don't know what. I always say it smells like grandma's attic, but it kind of smells like a hospital or something. But anyway, so you know, you can see I left some of the earlier, this was the phono tuner tape input, and it was converted with a guitar input. And so, and then I didn't really label it very much, and it left the little power connector that you could connect one unit to another. If you had a turntable or something else, you could run them in chain with each other. And I did see on the ads that you could buy the turntable, and you could buy the speaker cabinet, and you could buy the amp, and the whole setup for just a couple $100 back in the 50s and 60s, and you'd have what was the hi-fi sound of the era. And on the top, you could see that you could have the little impedance selector, the usual 4, 8, 16, 25, and 70. If you had longer speaker chains or runs, you would run the higher voltage impedance. And yeah, so sloppy sockets in this thing, tiny irons and sloppy sockets. Okay, standing over the schematic, I'm observing some of the changes I had written down that I had attempted, and immediately I noticed that I mistakenly had ran the input jack through the 470K into number 2, into the first grid of the first pin of the 12AX7. So and I have a 25 bypass cap on here with no resistor, so I don't know what the heck I was thinking. And then I looked inside the amp, so and it looks like coming up here to the pot, it's got a 470 with a treble peaker into this 01 cap and a bright cap. So I was obviously doing some other stuff here than what I had written down on the schematic. And this is a 68 cap and a 2.2 resistor. So this cathode bypass is probably maybe a little bit on the high endiness for this. You know, we'll see. But and then we're getting juiced by two 220K resistors. So what I'd like to do is go back and put a 68 or a 33 right here at this first input on number 2. And maybe I might even change this cap to a 1 and a 1.8 and see if we can get this thing to maybe like pick up a little bit. I don't want to go too crazy with it, but I don't know. We'll see. And then, you know, these old Chinese filter caps that are kind of floating around in here could probably be, you know, updated, replaced. Another thing, I did a little cathode bypass on the second stage, and goes to a 1.5 and a 10K. Probably this should have been maybe a 4.7 or a 7.5 at best. because it jumps a little hot with that 10K. It gets up a little bit. It gives it a little too much goose, I think. But we'll see. And then, of course, I'm using one of these dumb ohm switches. Don't ever use these things. Don't rely on these things to be anything. These switches will strip out eventually, and you'll turn the knob and it won't go to the right one. These things are transformer eaters. So get the good ones. Get the nice, expensiver ones. And you can see the wiring here. Nothing shrunk wrapped. I put this little protective cover thing on here. Hide the hide the leads because I didn't want to go back and redo them. So we should go back and fix that. And then here you look here in this by design. There's a it's got a little biasing thing going on that taps off the transformer. A little bit of voltage comes up, flips it around, sends it up as negative 16 volts into the grid leaks. So I think this might be some of the reason why my amp was getting hot, possibly. But so in looking in, this is what the selenium rectifier looks like. Ooh, there we go. And then I have the wrong cap on here. It says on the schematic for a 150 and I have a 100. So you never know. Could be that too. Maybe I need to get my values straightened out. This thing might pop right to life. But I wouldn't mind getting this little nest fixed up and getting something a little bit more nice and clean and solid on my input staging here at first. It's not bad what I got going here. I'm sure we could just go ahead and leave it. The amp sounds nice, right? I mean, the video, I think, kind of spoke for itself. It was very quiet, very clean. I love that. I mean, why do I want a quiet, clean little amp like this? I don't know. I have no application for it really anywhere for what I like to do, but I think it's nice to have it there and to have taken its somewhat simplistic circuitry and learned from it. And I recommend getting one of these or getting some of these easy basic designs and rip them apart and put them back together yourself. And it's fun. You'll learn a lot, and it's not assembly by numbers. So being that this was a phonograph and a microphone type amp, input amp, you know, they were building this to be as musical as possible and as full range as possible. And it's interesting to look how they were really taking it easy on the first you know, preamp tube. They were being very gentle, and then they slammed the phase inverter, and they create a little bit of a negative feedback network inside of here. It sends it back through and up again, so that it's kind of an interesting little. I'm not sure how that works. I'm sure people much better than me can explain it better. But some of the plate voltages I found were interesting. It starts off with a 1 meg, and then, you know, a 470, and then to a 68K for these plate resistors. So this has an interesting design, and like I said, it was designed to be as musical as possible, you know, because it was a phonograph, and it, you know, so I anticipate that by design they were trying to keep it as super clean and as super full rangey as possible, which is how I would like to keep this. Although in mine, right now, I'm certainly not running 047s. I have a set of O2 coupling caps in there right now. And like I said, the stuff I have going on is much different. But it would be interesting to take this thing back to its state and just run it like it is, and just kind of just set up an interesting, you know, simple input, and then send it back to kind of how it was to see what it would do musically. I'd be curious. Instead of me trying to turn it into some guitar amp, it would have been neater to just have left it in its state and just opened up the very beginning for guitar. But as it is, I've already, you know, switched some stuff around, and I'll probably just keep it like that. The amp sounds fair now, I would say. So I just need to clean it up inside and have a little fun with it, have my way with it. And you can see I was using some of these old Amazon caps that I had gotten, the bow jacks. That's a sign of some of my early work. But and of course the spaghetti plate wiring. And so yeah, here we go again. I'd like to say, just as a quick little disclaimer about these switches, when I said don't use these, don't get those, yeah, I mean don't get them for your speaker output selector switch. They're fine if you want to use them as like some type of a tonal selector switch, or if you're going to run resistors or caps off of them in some type of a thing where you want a multi selector for some type of a bypass thing, or some type of a different kind of a, whatever you're doing, something other than your speaker outputs, because these have been known to strip out on you, and then they don't attach correctly, and your next thing you know, your output transformer is heating up and going bad because the switch connections went bad on the inside, and they're pretty notorious for doing that. And I've heard some horror stories myself. So if you can, sorry, I got no. There we go. If you can't get these ones, these are the better, well-made ones. These ones don't use for your speaker outputs. Use these for bypass and just harmonic selection switching, or whatever you want to call it. They do have their use in an amp somewhere, but just not for your output, because they can easily strip out if you're not careful. If you turn them too hard, the contact inside here strips out, and then the wiper just goes anywhere it wants to, and it can touch any one of the other connections. So heard it happen several times. It's happened to me several times, and so I try to stop using those in that spot. So I might even just go back and fix that, and it's probably best just to use. I don't know why my phone's acting all funky. It's probably best just to use separate output jacks, but the selector switch sure is convenient. this covered up. Care of professional, top notch. Heat it up. I always hate doing this because I always burn myself. Okay, there's one. Other side. Well, it ain't pretty, but it's gonna lay on there. We'll call it good. There we go. It's always good to have those 120 volt AC leads protected at all times. It's just smart work. It shows the sign of someone who's just kind of a hobbyist and not really caring too much, and someone who actually, you know, cares that there's some voltages present. So, and you know, when I first started, I didn't really care too much. I just wanted to see these things come alive. And so I wasn't super concerned about, you know, that type of stuff or any type of layout. I was just learning and trying to get it going, and you know, trial by error, trial by stone. Okay, the night amp, 3220, the dark night. I don't know. I always laugh at this amp because it was called the night amp, but it's not much of a night. It's pretty wimpy. But, you know, hey, 1967, what do you expect? It was a good year. I wasn't born yet, but, okay, so some other things we're looking at here. I was thinking maybe it might be some good etiquette to go ahead and tuck away these other wires that aren't being used. And obviously these speaker leads are way too long. I mean, that's something right off the bat that should gather your attention and say that, well, that needs to be fixed. So that's something we can work on, as well as this. Is this a 4? You know what? I think that's actually a 47K. Hold on a minute. I could have been wrong earlier. Yeah, I was wrong earlier. Okay, I take it back. So this wasn't a 470K in here. It was a 47K, which is absolutely fine. And you know what? I think I might just leave that for now. It was scaring me that I had a 470, and I should have known that wasn't a 470. I'm feeling kind of dumb now. But, well, let's just go ahead and work on these speaker leads. Do the 8 ohm one first. never make them too tight. You want to give yourself a little bit of slack. And once again, these old waxy leads that have this protective coating on them that kind of, it gets weird over time. But these ones are still actually fairly decent. They're actually still somewhat pliable. So try and just get rid of some of this and make some space on here. Yeah, these things are so delicate, man. You gotta just cut them with a razor knife, otherwise they break apart really easily. Let's just tuck that down. Let's go ahead and play kill. Come in from below and fold it up. That was a little sloppy. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't like filming myself while I work. I feel very uncomfortable under the camera. I don't feel comfortable filming what I do. I feel like I have to hurry, or I don't want to waste time or say something stupid. I gotta kind of hurry through what I'm doing because I don't want to, like, I don't know. I just like to take my sweet time when I do things. And if sometimes it's one frickin' resistor an hour, then that's what I want to do. And sometimes I'll sit here and scratch my head and I'll walk around the room 3 times. And, you know, I don't get to do that when the camera's rolling. So I do feel really uncomfortable, and it does feel narcissistic to me to sit here and film myself. And especially when I feel like, you know, to be honest with you, I don't know. I know what I'm doing to a point, but you know, there's a lot of people out there filming themselves and making amps and doing stuff, and they know way more than I do. I mean, I'm learning a lot. I enjoy this. I'm making some high gain amps. I have a good ear for tone. I know that. I can recognize that. But you know, whether or not people want to see what I'm doing here, that's the, you know, that's the real thing. I got a few subscribers. I appreciate y'all. If this is your first time watching, cheers to you. Like and subscribe. I'm Alex Voda. About time for me to replace my soldering setup. It's starting to get a little messy, and I've run out of decent tips for this Yihua. I totally recommend this Yihua soldering unit. You can't see the box, but this thing works so well, and it's been on every day for years, and I can't say enough about how well these things are. Excuse me, I'm sure there's nicer ones out there, for sure. But, you know, this one's just been with me, and I use it, and I like it, and I recommend it. Unless, of course, you're one of those people that want to go spend a bunch of money on whatever it is you like to do. You're the kind of person that when you go buy something, you got to have kind of the nicest thing or whatever. My stepdad, or my dad was like that. Excuse me, I shouldn't call him my stepdad. I love him very much. He's way more than a stepdad to me. My dad was always like that. Whenever he got something, he always made sure that it was the nicest one that you could get. Like, he wouldn't do it unless he could afford a really, really nice one. And I always admired that about him. I never really had that quality. I was satisfied with mediocrity, I guess. But anyways. Cut off a little bit of this. Sure, people are going to comment about the way I do my wire stripping, but I don't care.
Sorry, he's just crazy. He wanted it and he was going to hit the door.
This is the 25 and 70 volt leads coming off the transformer, which don't really get used. So I need to take a look at these wire leads against these colors here and see if I got my colors right. Of course, they don't list any colors for the leads coming off. I can go look at some pictures online though. And the reason why I say that is because all the other speaker jack leads are coming off this particular spot where the output transformer section's coming off with this one, which looks like it's a center tap for something, but it was definitely attached to these two and it was done at the factory. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue to honor that for now as being done right. And I'm just going to kind of roll these up into a little knot. Cloth around these wires is just, it's really cool. It's just really still in really good condition. 1967. It still has its wax on it and it's still in really good condition. Sometimes you see them and they're horrible. They're rock solid and they're stiff, and that's usually because the amp is severely overheated. But otherwise, these things should stay good for a while.